Welcome back to the I Believe podcast. I'm your host, Danae Peterson, and I'm here with patient Karen Long from Billings, Montana. And today, you guys, we're going to talk about the problem of how do you even know what questions to ask when you don't even understand the cancer that you've been diagnosed with, right? So we're talking to Karen, who is also a patient. She's going to tell us a little bit more about her story. But first off, Karen, you're in Billings, Montana. So I can only imagine this is kind of a hard place to get treatment for ocular melanoma. Do you want to just tell us a little bit about, I guess let's just hear, how many places have you gone to for care so far?
Well, thank you, Danae, for having me on. I was diagnosed in 2018, and when my retinologist told me that I had ocular melanoma, I had no idea what it was. And he started to describe to me what kind of a procedure that I would be going through. At that point, he was describing brachytherapy. And I said, is there a chance that I would lose my sight? And he said, I'm less concerned about you losing your sight than I am about your mortality. And at that point, it became so focused in my mind that I'm going to figure out what to do to save my life. And so at that point, I went to Denver. My tumor was too big to have brachytherapy, and I ended up in Boston at Massachusetts Eye and Ear, and I had proton beam. Because proton beam is not available really in very many places. From there, I found out that my tumor in my eye was class 2, which is the most aggressive, and my PRAME diagnosis was negative, which means it's a little less aggressive. And then I went, since I was class 2, I was eligible for a clinical trial. So there was a clinical trial open in New York. And so then in 2019, I went to New York and enrolled in a clinical trial with 2 drugs called Opdivo and Yervoy, which are immunotherapy drugs. And as you can imagine, that was a pretty big decision from Montana to New York. And I flew every 2 weeks for 7 months to New York. This kind of a decision was a decision to be proactive in order to try and prevent the metastasis that could likely happen with an aggressive tumor. And that was something that I was willing to take that risk because I knew that I was giving myself the best chance at hopefully reducing my chances of a metastatic occurrence, and also hopefully giving the rest of us the chance at a breakthrough of a treatment that could prevent metastatic melanoma, ocular melanoma. So from there, my story is a lot like the rest of yours. I scan. And every time it was, I scan every 3 months. And unfortunately, I will say fortunately, I made the 3-month or the 3-year mark with no metastasis, which was a big hurdle to make considering I was in the trial. So that was a win. But at 5 years, I did develop my first lesion. So I've had 3 lesions, and they've been each treated individually. And I feel pretty good about that, that I have a really great team, and I've worked hard to get that team. So there I am. Here I am today.
Okay. Well, Karen, I am so glad you're here with me, and I am so excited for our listeners. Karen has some really awesome advice as a patient, and I'm thrilled because I feel like we are kind of 2 sides of the same coin, and we think about things really pretty similarly. And I'm really excited for you guys to learn from her about what we have to talk about today. So one of the things we were chatting about earlier, Karen, was just this idea that when we're given this diagnosis, one of the hardest things that we cope with is this uncertainty and not really having a set path, right? So you mentioned that even going to the doctor, like you don't actually get an answer right away, even when you're getting your diagnosis. Sometimes it can take weeks, months. There's a lot of things we just have the answer back from our doctor of, well, we don't really know yet. Whether it's you're dealing with metastatic disease and there's kind of this watch and wait period, or at the primary diagnosis. Like there's a lot of these periods where we have to kind of just sit back and our doctors are like, well, it's actually better for me to watch and wait first. Or I don't actually have an answer for you. So What did you learn when you were confronted with this kind of lack of information and, all of these different doctors you've seen? Because you've seen a lot of doctors all around the country.
Yeah.
So when you've been confronted with a doctor who maybe is telling you, well, I don't really have the answer for you right now, or maybe they're giving you answers you don't like, what are some of the things that you feel like are important to do initially to get those answers or to just kind of get feeling better?
Well, initially, like I said, I didn't know how big my tumor was. And I went down to Denver and saw Dr. Oliver, and I can sing his praises. He's a wonderful doctor. But he only performs what is called brachytherapy. And that is one type of treatment for a specific size of tumor. But my tumor was on the verge between medium and large. And brachytherapy isn't really designed to treat the larger tumors. And so at that point, I was getting educated. And so I was finding out that there's another treatment called proton beam. And then you go, well, how do I find where does proton beam is that administered? And I actually went to San Francisco and found out that there is, a treatment in San Francisco, but their proton beam machine was down, their cyclotron was down, and I ended up in Boston. So there was, quite a bit of travel. Now, maybe not everybody is going to go through that travel, but I did research ahead of time to say, what are my options? And because I didn't want to damage my eye through the brachytherapy and I wanted to save my eye, I did not know about our Facebook group. And I just want to say that in the very beginning. Once I found the Facebook group, it was just like doors opened for me. So that's where a lot of help has come once I found the Facebook group.
Aura Biosciences is a clinical stage biotechnology company focused on developing precision therapies for solid tumors that aim to preserve organ function. Our lead candidate, Belsar, is currently in late-stage development for primary choroidal melanoma and in early-stage development in other ocular oncology indications and bladder cancer. Our mission is to grow as an innovative global oncology company that positively transforms the lives of patients. For more information, please visit us at aurabiosciences.com.
Well, let's kind of back up to the beginning, right? You get a new diagnosis, and as patients, one of the first things that we feel is fear, right? We feel a lot of fear. Did you experience a lot of fear at your initial diagnosis?
Yes, extreme fear.
I think that's pretty normal, right? I mean, especially if your doctor tells you something like, I'm less worried about your eye and more about your mortality, right? That's kind of maybe a gentler way to put it, but also still very fear-inducing. And that's the scary thing of like, oh, well, I walked in expecting maybe to have a surgery to repair a torn retina, and I walked out with a cancer diagnosis that may or may not be mortality inducing. And like, how horrifying is that, right? Like, I think we can all relate to feeling the fear, whether we're getting a metastatic diagnosis or a primary ocular melanoma diagnosis. So it's kind of, I mean, for me at least, it's been kind of an ongoing process to just learn to accept the unknown, or just accept that the unknown is like a constant part of my life now. I joke that like Frozen from Let It Go, from Frozen, like let it go, but also like into the unknown, right? Like that's kind of our life, is that we're on this ride and it's taking us further and further into the unknown. What are some of the things that have helped you accept the fear, like, and kind of get to that place where you no longer are as fearful?
Well, that's a very good question, because I don't know if we ever quite get there. Getting comfortable being uncomfortable. And that's really true. We're always going to be scanning. That's just going to be a part of our lives, and always going to be wondering, is this the time that I'm going to get that scan that says you have a lesion that is, questionable, and now we have to wait to the next scan to see if it's going to grow, and then what are we going to do about it? There's that anxiety. Being comfortable with your oncologist and your medical team, to me, that gives me a huge comfort. And knowing that they have and will take care of me, and they will do their best and have the tools to do the treatments, and will take care of me whatever comes up. So I lay in comfort knowing that even if that scan comes up with something that I don't like, and as I'm anxiously awaiting it, I try to remind myself that my team is here to take care of me. Don't think that it's all on me. I've got to solve the problem. I will call myself, I'm a fixer. and I want to fix it. I want to fix it now. Well, I'm part of a great team that will fix it and help me with the process. So having a good team is important. So if you don't trust your team, find a team you like.
Yeah. No, that's so important. And I love what you said about how this is something that you know about yourself, that you're a fixer, but recognizing you don't have to fix it alone. That is such a good point. And that's part of why we have medical teams. That's why we build a team. And I think that's maybe one of the hardest, scary feeling things. And like you said, it can be comforting, but at the same time, it's so complicated sometimes to build a team of people that you trust, people that you're comfortable traveling to see, be it locally or that you have to go out of state. It can take time. And one of the frustrating things about time is that it involves you sitting, like you said, and being comfortable in the uncomfortable, right? Because it's uncomfortable not to have a solid team built, but it does take time to build that team. It might take you the better part of a few months. It might take you years to really build a team that you are solidly comfortable with, that you refer to, okay, hey, I need you to talk to me about this, and you're my people who I talk to about this. Like, there's kind of a lot of different areas, and you can kind of accumulate these different experts along the way, so to speak, depending on what's going on in your story. And it's hard for us to say exactly what kind of experts you are going to need, you guys, because your story is going to look different than mine and Karen's. And that's so important to recognize, is that it is going to look different. And so please take hope from Karen or my story or other people that are doing well or that are, doing things this way, but also feel the stories of other people and mold your own story, knowing that really, bottom line, you're just not alone in dealing with this and navigating with uncertainty. Like, you are not alone. We're all doing this in different ways. And so anyway, Karen and I are trying to hopefully convey to you guys some ways that you can cope with that uncertainty.
Right. And one of the things that we said,
go ahead.
excuse me, Danae, is we advocate for ourselves. So if you're not feeling like you have that support, is to advocate, to ask the questions. And again, back to, if you're not finding the support that you need, do ask around, ask the group, do you have somebody that you would recommend? Because it is important that you feel supported. So to not sit back and feel like my doctor is not doing what I want them to do, or they're not supporting me. Advocate for yourself, because it's so important. This is a lonely disease, because if you're not supported by your doctor and our Facebook group, you could be out there all on your own, and that's not a good place to be.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so we talked a lot about the idea that information actually can help address the fear, right? And so part of the fear comes from not having answers. So of course, time, right? We know that time is sometimes needed to get those answers, because maybe you're stuck with a tumor or a lesion on your liver, or just some situation has arisen where there is a waiting period. And so time, right? You have to give time. But aside from time, how do you feel like information has helped you in dealing with the fear and just the uncertainty?
I would much rather have the diagnosis of anything than to be waiting with no information. Because then once I have the information, I can make a plan and create an action plan. If it's a good or bad, I don't care. I just would rather have the information, and then I can move on and make decisions. If I'm sitting with no information, that's the worst for me.
Yeah. It's like a limbo feeling.
It's a limbo feeling. And I know that a lot of people on our Facebook page will say, I'm not sure if I should have the biopsy done. I always advocate to them to please get the biopsy done, because then, number one, you know what you are, so that you then can get the scan schedule, and then you have options to go into clinical trials. If you don't know, you're not giving yourselves options to be proactive for your life. And I really feel sad if people don't give themselves those options. So information is power.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Okay, so what if you're confronted with a doctor who's telling you, okay, I don't actually know. I don't know exactly what's going on, or I don't know which direction you should go. I guess I kind of feel like what I see happen for patients, and what I tend to start to notice for myself, is if my doctor tells me, oh, well, I don't actually really know, my tendency is to be like, well, then I guess there isn't an answer, right? And I think that we both have come to a place where we recognize if our doctor is not giving us an answer, not because they don't have it or that it doesn't exist, it's just that maybe they haven't had the time to go get it, right? But that we have to challenge that, whether it's that we challenge it and we go look for information ourselves, or just trusting this idea of like figuring things out as we go. So how has that looked for you?
Well, I usually come into a doctor's office with A, B, C, you know. I've read my scans because usually they're available before I go into the doctor's office. And then I ask questions about what the scan, what I've seen, and I question what I've seen so he can clarify them for me. And then I ask, what about this treatment, or this treatment? What do you think about those treatments? And I get his opinion. Is this something that we need to consider? Is this something we need to consider? And then he'll give me his opinion. And then we can have a discussion. So that's the way it's worked with my oncologist. So I've not ever come to that situation where my oncologist has said, I don't know what to do, because mine has definitely been knowledgeable and I trust him. So.
Well, and I think that's a good point, is maybe to just point out that maybe we're afraid our doctor might say they don't know an answer, right? Because this cancer is so much of an orphan cancer that we don't have all the answers. We do have doctors that will readily admit they don't have all the answers. They're still trying to figure it out. But I think that's the point, right? That's the whole point of that phrase, is they're still trying to figure it out.
Well, let me rephrase that. I'm not saying that he has all the answers about what's going to happen in the future. That's not what I'm talking about. He can't predict. But if I'm asking about what kind of treatments would he recommend, we can have a discussion about treatments. But what's going to happen in the future, there's no magic ball. No. And there isn't any proven track about, what works. So for instance, when I was in the clinical trial, is this going to work or not? No, there's no answer. Even with the results of the clinical trial, we showed improvements of the statistics, but it's not going to be, it's not FDA approved yet. So we can make improvements in inches, but there still is no answer.
Yeah. No, that's such a good point too. And sorry if I misled with what I was saying too. It's not necessarily like a doctor that's saying they literally don't know the answer to your question. It's more of maybe your question is one that the only answer is left is, I don't know. I can't give you that reassurance. And sometimes that can be really frustrating to hear.
Right.
Because that's where we get stuck, I think, sometimes, is we get stuck in the fear, we get stuck in the desire to know, well, what caused this, right? That's an I don't know question. No doctor can tell you for sure what caused it to grow, what caused it to show up in the first place. And that's one of those questions that our brain goes looking for answers that is an unhelpful question. It's not helpful to stay there on the, well, what made this happen? What caused it? What did I do wrong? Any of those things. Those are unhelpful questions. And the answer to that is, I don't know. But if you are confronted with situations that you have to watch and wait, or you're kind of stuck in this waiting period, sometimes challenging the idea of, like, for example, when I was diagnosed with a liver met, the first thing my doctor told me was, well, this is too small to biopsy. And everyone that I've talked to has agreed it's in a really hard location, so we kind of just have to watch it and see what happens. That was really uncomfortable for me because I wanted to take action. I wanted to just get rid of it. I wanted to start a clinical trial. I wanted to do whatever it was that was going to be the best plan for me. And so to be stuck in that limbo and not have a for sure we could do something now kind of an action, that was an I don't know that I didn't like. But it was also one that I could challenge, right? That I could go into doing more research. I could go into learning about my present situation and what could I do? What kinds of biopsy was I going to look forward to if I needed it? And it just became, instead of getting stuck in the I don't know and I'm really scared, it became, okay, I don't know. And I'm still going to do research and figure out plan A, B, C, D, E, F, G, because then if we need it, we have it lined up. And thankfully I have a doctor who knows that I am that kind of a patient and he's willing to talk through the hypothetical with me. And sometimes that's all we need. That's also something that, disclaimer, you can do with a therapist. It's really a good idea to have a therapist with this diagnosis if you're able to have someone to provide that kind of talk therapy support or psychological support. So little disclaimer there. You mentioned a little trick, Karen, about like getting in touch with your doctor, right? What if you have a question? You've had your appointment and you're like, well, crap, I forgot A, B, C, D, E, F, G on my list. I forgot to ask him these things. What have you found to be the best way to get in touch with your doctor and your medical team?
Well, I found the best is when you call the front desk, ask for your doctor's nurse. And then once you get a hold of the nurse, say, could you please have Dr. So and so call me back, or this is the question that I have for my doctor, and could you please pass it on? Because you get to the doctor a lot quicker if you get to his nurse first. If you leave that message at the front desk, it could sit there for a long time.
Yeah. And another phrase for this, if maybe your doctor uses different terms, my doctor uses the term medical assistant. He has a medical assistant that designates all of the messages that go to and from, like back and forth. So medical assistant, your doctor's nurse, like just try to figure out who's kind of the key person that your
Right.
doctor talks to so that you can be in touch with them directly and not just, somebody way down the chain of command, so to speak. Okay, I love that trick. Thank you, Karen. I want to move on to talking a little bit more about kind of the ways that we can educate ourselves as patients. And I love what you talked about earlier when you said, there's a few different sources outside of your doctor that you look to for information. So one of the things you mentioned was word of mouth. So how have you found word of mouth? Because you live in Billings, Montana. My suspicion is you don't actually have like local neighbors you go and talk to at book club about ocular melanoma. So how do you talk to people if you're in the middle of nowhere with no patients around you?
Well, honestly, our Facebook group has been one of my biggest support groups. And when somebody gets a treatment, they'll say, what kind of treatment they've had, what kind of experience they've had. And then I have the ability to then go to the internet and look that treatment up and find out, specifics about it, where it's offered, because we don't have anything offered here. I can't, besides radiation, which I did have one of my 3 treatments was done here, and it was radiation. Most of my other 2 treatments were done in New York. That's something that I have to face. My treatments are going to be done elsewhere. When Danae, she had her histotripsy, she posted not only about the histotripsy, but there was a podcast that she posted about. So I was able to go to that podcast and learn about the doctor and specifically where his clinic was. And so I feel that through our Facebook group, online has been a huge support, emotional support, people that are real, that are going through what we're all going through the same thing. And then also we're shared experiences with the specific treatments, how those treatments have affected us, what kind of side effects. And then we can go and research them on our own, which I do. And then, of course, going to the Ocular Insight page, researching the specific doctors that have been mentioned, and then, connecting one-on-one. So I've done that quite a bit. So I've reached out to people to offer that are new to the page, if they want to have a one-on-one talk with me, or if somebody else has had a treatment that I'm interested in, I'll reach out to them and say, how did that go? So that I can learn from them.
Well, and it's so important, I think, to just note here that like what Karen is describing is not I'm going to Facebook for medical information and
No.
that's my sole point of contact with how I'm learning about something. It's one thing to take medical advice from a Facebook group. It's another to say, ooh, that sounds interesting. I want to learn more, and to go and do your own research, which that's what Karen is advocating for, is this idea that you can take the information, the experience from other people, and you can then learn from it. And it's a little bit of a puzzle. You kind of have to figure out the pieces of the puzzle along the way. Karen, is this the kind of thing that, like, just let's use histotripsy as an example, because you mentioned that. Did you just like see that one day and then by the end of the day you had all the answers you needed? Or did it take a little bit of time to get those answers?
Yeah, it took a little bit of time. First, you shared that you were having it, and then I don't remember how much longer it was till you posted a podcast. Then I joined another Facebook group that's specifically for histotripsy patients, or you don't have to be a patient, you can just join it.
Yeah, just
And
it's an interest group, I think.
it's an interest group. And since this is something that's new, it is FDA approved, but there are still a lot of questions out there whether or not it's going to be, successful, or are the lesions going to come back? There's a lot of question about its effectiveness. So, people are asking a lot of questions, and rightly so, because we are there again, coming back to the unknown. We don't know. There are so many new things being tried, and it's exciting, but it's also, we're a test group. Just back to what I did with the clinical trial to try and see if I could prevent, if I could help try these drugs to help prevent metastasis. We're trying anything to extend our lives and to be a part of that. So I commend you, Danae, and I think it's wonderful, and I'm very curious about that procedure because it also
for sure.
has few side effects. And that's the other thing that we deal with a lot of the drugs in the clinical trials are the side effects.
We can either frame the unknown as a scary place or as a place that is a bit of a challenge, right? A challenge, a puzzle to be solved. And if we can approach our diagnosis from the idea that this is a puzzle to be solved and be hand in hand with our doctors and not caught up in the fear, because that's where our doctors live, you guys. Like, our doctors live in the place where they see us, they see this diagnosis as a puzzle to be solved.
Absolutely.
They believe it will be solved, or that it has the potential to be solved.
Hard to do that.
And they're working so hard. People are researching. We've got people in clinical trials. We have primary investigators of just the doctors who are running these clinical trials. We've got doctors just kind of throwing noodles at a wall to see what sticks with each patient. Everybody is just really trying everything they can think of to make sure that patients have the best outcome possible. And they care so much. But if we come into an appointment and we're so stuck in fear that all our doctor can do is try to reassure us through the fear, then we're not really having an effective appointment. And I think that's part of what Karen and I want to talk to you guys about, is just help you get to a place where you can recognize, A, it's valid. It's very valid, and it's normal to be scared. It's normal to be stuck in that unknown and to not like how it feels. You don't have to like how it feels. But I think that the big point that we want to get across is you are not powerless. You are not powerless, and if you approach your appointment from a place of believing that you can figure this out, that together with your medical team, you guys can figure something out. It might just be one little puzzle piece, right? You might not get the whole puzzle put together, but even if you just take one step forward, and I think, Karen, you said like 1 inch forward, like that's still an inch, and that's still a gain.
Absolutely. Yep. And feeling like you are engaged in your own treatment. And the people that you meet along the way, that's the other thing. I met wonderful people through my clinical trial, and they all cared so much. And they cared about me, and they cared about the other patients, and they cared about the outcomes. And so, I saw that and I appreciated that. And again, that made me feel like I was doing the right thing for me and for the rest of us. Again, this is a scary place to be, but it is something that I feel it's worthwhile engaging in, because I'd rather be engaged than sit back and be afraid.
Mm-hmm. And I think that one of the other things that we have talked about together is this idea that you can be engaged and you can still live your life, right? You can still live your life. You can disengage at will from cancer. Just because Karen and I are talking about doing your own research, about, tapping into the podcast, that doesn't mean you're spending every single day and making it your full-time job all day long to research ocular melanoma or metastatic treatments or clinical trials, like be it what it is. It doesn't mean that. It just means that you stay engaged with the process when you need it and when it's the most beneficial for you. Now, I kind of want to add a caveat and ask you if maybe you've gone through this too. Sometimes when I'm stuck in a place of waiting, like where maybe I have a scan result, my doctor doesn't know for sure what's going on, and we have to sit back and watch and wait, that is one of the hardest things for me, because I want the answers. And so then I go looking for the answers, because I too am someone who feels empowered by information. So I go looking for the answers, and sometimes I dig really deep. Sometimes I get really, really bogged down, and I almost like kind of get tunnel vision, and then I want the next answer, and I want the next answer. And it's kind of like the definition of pi, right? Like the number 3.14, whatever. Like it just keeps going on forever. Like you will always find something else to want to find an answer to. So I think that this needs to be tempered a little bit with the, yes, do your own research, but also recognize when it's emotionally or mentally becoming too much for you. Because I think we all get to that point, and that point's going to look different for me than it looks for Karen or for you. So it's really important to recognize that it's okay to unplug and to disengage from the cancer world. It's so, so vital that you do that. I've talked about this with other guests on the podcast, but Karen, what are a couple of the ways that you feel like you're able to just disengage from cancer and focus on being present and just living your life?
Well, I'm in that situation right now. I am waiting for a call from New York. I have my results. I have questions, and it's difficult. For me, it's prayer. For me, it's family. For me, because we have some nice fall days right now, it's taking my dog for a walk. For me, it is being active, not sitting and thinking. It's very hard for me not to want to send an email and say, have you heard anything yet? To the person I contact back east. But to sit and be patient. And that is very difficult. I still have troubles with that. So,
Well, and I think
for
that's
me,
normal. Like,
it is. And I think everybody goes through that. But again, back to trusting in my team, trusting that in their time, I have to let them process, and in their time, they will get back to me with an answer that is appropriate. And if it was an emergency, you come back to the adage, no news is good news. If it was a real emergency, they would be already in touch with me. So that's where I have to live. I have to take the deep breath and I have to say, it's okay. They're working on it and they'll get back to me. And I'm coming up against a weekend and I'm probably going to have to wait till Monday. And that's not easy. But I have plans with my family this weekend and I'm just going to have to put this on the shelf and go do my family plans.
you guys listening, let's all just take a deep breath together. So Karen, I love that you did that like on camera. So let's do it again because I'm sure it felt really good.
Yeah.
Okay, so in through your nose. Maybe hold it. 3, 2, 1. And let it all out. Just the act of taking a deep breath is so grounding and it's so helpful. We've had multiple people who've been guest speakers, guests on the podcast who've talked about the importance of just giving yourself space to breathe. And I think, like you said, just trusting the process, trusting that no news is maybe not the best news, but it's also like it's not an emergency unless they're getting in immediate contact with you. And that is a good thing.
Castle Biosciences is a proud sponsor of this I Believe podcast. Castle's innovative uveal melanoma tests provide valuable information about the risk of your eye cancer spreading to help you and your healthcare team individualize the management of your disease. To learn more, visit castlebiosciences.com.
Let's just kind of highlight a couple things as we kind of look back on our episode today. Karen talked about making sure that you have confidence in your physician team. If you don't have confidence, then you need to be looking elsewhere. One of the best places that you can start is you can reach out to other ocular melanoma patients who seem to be having good care, and you can ask them where they're going for care. Just kind of as a note, if you are looking for a doctor outside of your location, that you might consider asking for referrals to doctors who can see you via telehealth. You don't necessarily always have to be in the office to have a doctor's appointment. And that's one of the beautiful things that the whole pandemic situation gave us, was the possibility and the confidence that telehealth can still be helpful. And so trusting in that as an avenue. But I think that the other kind of main piece was that Karen said, take the Facebook group, of course, but also take it to the sources. Find the research articles, find the podcast episodes, find our YouTube channel. Hint, hint, subscribe. Subscribe. Help us get to over 1,000 subscribers, you guys. Just to toot our own horn here, we at Ocular Insight have done a lot of work the last, I don't even know how long, 10, 11 years since Ocular Insight was founded. And specifically in the last 4 years, we've done a lot to make sure that we as a team are bringing you the most current information in the ocular melanoma and the uveal melanoma treatment space. We're connected with the pharmaceutical companies. We put out information in our monthly newsletter. So get on our website, go to ocurinsight.org, make sure you subscribe to all of the different channels and places you can find us, social media, YouTube, the podcast, but also subscribe on the button to that newsletter so that you can get the information to your inbox once a month and you can see what's going on. It might be research, it might be events where you can connect with patients, but we will also just make sure that you have access to the resources that we are aware of as we learn of them. And that could also include things like travel aid and ideas for how you can get financial aid if needed. It might not be feasible to travel cross country without some help. So we want you to know that that stuff is out there. So the ultimate question that we've been trying to answer is, okay, I don't have answers, and that's a really uncomfortable place to be. And so what can I do? And the answer is that there's a lot, right? There's a lot you can do.
Right. You need to reach out to the other ocular melanoma patients, first of all, because there's a lot of us in the group. And that, first of all, is your best support, people who understand what you're going through. And then secondly, make sure that you have a team, be your medical oncologist and your ocular oncologist that you trust and you feel like you're getting the answers and the support that you need. And then thirdly, go out and research the things that you don't understand. If you're not understanding from the very beginning, your diagnosis, or certain terms. Like there's a lot of new language that is coming up and we don't understand even, what the class means or the PRAME diagnosis means. And there are terms like immunoembolization or ablation or histotripsy. If those terms you don't understand, then I go to the internet and I would find out what do they mean. And then further than that, I would go to somebody who has had those treatments and ask them, how have you been affected by those treatments? So I think it's a full circle there too, because not only do you want to know the clinical understanding of them, but you also want to have that context of how has it affected the person who's had the treatment. So I think that kind of knowledge, bringing it all back together, has helped me understand that it's not so scary then. Yes, we are all facing this. Yes, those are possibilities. We may have not crossed that bridge yet, but for me to be somewhat prepared that may be something that I might be going through helps me understand that it's not going to be so bad, if you will, because I do have options out there and there are treatments available. And I can talk to my doctors about it when and if the time comes.
Sometimes it might just help to talk about the possibilities with your doctor, right? And to just have that conversation of, okay, well, hypothetically, if it were as bad as I'm afraid it could be, like walk me through what could happen. I'm pretty sure we have patients who are therapists or psychologists who would tell us that some form of CBT or cognitive behavioral therapy to walk yourself through okay, yes, let's pretend it is worst case scenario. What do we do then? And give yourself an opportunity to structure a hypothetical plan. That is so reassuring to me, like emotionally, mentally. That helps my brain turn off the fight or flight mode and like go into the problem solving mode. Which I think that you touched on this too, is that you look at your scan results. I wanted to point this out before we end. You look at your scan results before you go see your doctor. Oh. And I cannot tell you how many patients I have told that I do that are like, ooh, I don't think I could do that. Mm-hmm. And I just would challenge you to try it. You won't know what you can actually handle until you do it. And while it can feel really frustrating to get results before you have a chance to talk to your doctor, if you do have that opportunity where that's how it's given to you, it can provide a unique chance for you to go to the appointment prepared with the questions and not be in the middle of an emotional fallout during the appointment. And I think that's what I have appreciated. The longer that I have gone through this over the last 4 years, I have appreciated being able to get past the emotional turmoil on my own, or with my therapist, or with my family and my support people, and then go to my appointment ready to take action, ready to problem solve and kind of puzzle piece with my doctor. Like that is so important. And it's very empowering to me. Because then I walk out of that appointment feeling at least like I'm on the right path, right? Or like I have a direction and not like now I have to wait again to even find a plan. That kind of limbo place, it helps me get through the limbo faster. And of course, disclaimer, we do know that sometimes the time is a factor and you do have to wait, and that's hard. So anyway, just holding space for that. Karen, I love that you just talked about this idea that, despite all of these things, like, you have control over how you obtain information, over how you do the research, and that taking that control helps you get out of the fear and the unknown and the kind of stuck feeling in that space.
Absolutely.
Whether this works for you or maybe it might help somebody that you know, please consider sharing this episode and share it with somebody else. Karen, do you have anything you want to say as we end?
No, but I just want to thank you, Danae, for all that you're doing. I mean, you're reaching out and educating people, and this is what we need. We need to make sure that we help each other through this process because it is scary. There are a lot of unknowns, and the more we do things like this to help each other, the more ease we can bring our fellow OMIs. So thank you again.
So if you have any things you want to ask, drop comments on this on this episode. Feel free to share this with family and friends. Make sure to subscribe, and we will see you guys next time.
All right. Thanks.